Amazing. Thank you, Yoni. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today with our two community creative fellows, Yoni Battat and Adriana Katso. I'm Sophie Krentzman, CJP's Combined Jewish Philanthropies, Director of Arts and Culture. And as we go through the webinar and we go through the discussion, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. And if we can, we'll get to them at the end as time permits. So we're going to start by asking actually Yoni and Adriana to introduce each other. You'll see as the webinar progresses, but they've had a very kind of unexpected and wonderful partnership and collaboration as fellows in this cohort. So we thought it would be nice to let them talk about each other. So Yoni, why don't you start with Adriana?
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Adriana Katso, my new friend and colleague, who is a Jewish Latina visual artist whose work focuses on photography, but she uses other mediums as well. And she got her doctorate from Harvard, and she is a professor at Mass Art. And a lot of her work deals with themes of social justice and intersectionality between Latinx communities and her many different identities. And she's shown work at venues from Taller Puertorriqueño Gallery in Philadelphia and the Mass Art Museum and others.
Great, thank you. And Adriana, could you introduce Yoni, please?
Thanks, Yoni. Well, introducing Yoni is not easy because I cannot capture in words what I know about him, but I'll say really basically, just very few stats. Yoni Battat is an instrumentalist, he's a composer, he's a vocalist, and his work is based in traditional Jewish forms from the Middle East and Eastern Europe, and that's partly, or I would say greatly formed by his own background as Iraqi Jewish and Polish Ashkenazi. And Yoni also has degrees in viola performance from BU or Boston University, from those who are out of town, and Brandeis. And Yoni has performed all over the world, really, including Toronto, Jewish Music Week. And what I can say personally is that Yoni is an incredibly reflective person, and it's been a pleasure working with him for the past almost year.
Thank you both. So as you can see, we have two very special creatives who were in our inaugural class of this Community Creative Fellowship. And we were so excited to launch this collaboration between CJP and the Jewish Arts Collaborative this year. And our goal was really to create space for creatives in our community to take the time to deeply engage both with their art, with their Jewishness, and with the community at large. The fellows were each given opportunities to work with a mentor, a wonderful woman named Tova Speeder, who I think is on the call. So thank you, Tova, for all your time, and with a Jewish educator. And they each ran community workshops to help people connect with them and their work and Jewish art in general. So we've definitely had quite a year. It's been an amazing first cohort, an amazing pilot. Yoni and Adriana have been just amazing people to kind of represent what this fellowship is supposed to be. And also, we were in the middle of, kind of a big public health crisis. So it's been really interesting to have, these community conversations online and to feel that connection with other people, even in the midst of this time of crisis. So it's definitely been an interesting year, but we're so grateful to both of you for all of your work and for pivoting with us along the way. So I would just love to hear first from each of you, kind of what was a highlight for you during this fellowship experience? And Adriana, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, thank you, Sophie. Well, it was kind of hard to bring it to one highlight. So I'll just, what has been the highlight about this fellowship is that it combines both our own art practice and our own possibility of developing our own work and also being community engaged. For me, just having these many months to be able to really delve deeply into the work I wanted to do, which resulted in an exploration of my maternal grandparents' migration from Poland to Mexico and what life they constructed in this new world that they experienced, doing it through objects of theirs and through memory and stories that I've been able to gather, especially from my mother. So, and obviously archival photographs. So that's been a highlight. And I just have to say that the other highlight is the ability to not just delve deeply into my own work, but be able to do several community engagements, some individually and some with Yoni, to try to reach multiple communities within the Jewish community, including Jews of color, Latinx Jews, Mizrahi, Sephardic Jews, indigenous Jews. So that's been the highlight of the fellowship.
Great, thank you. Yoni?
Yeah, honestly, everything about this has been a highlight for me. It's been such a blessing, really, to have this opportunity, especially in the middle of COVID, when so much of my other work was not keeping me busy. And so to have the structure of this fellowship where I can really dig deep into my own creative capabilities and ideas with the structure of the fellowship and with the deadlines and the end goals, that was really helpful for me. I'm someone who really works and gets energy from having deadlines and goals. So that was very helpful for me. And yeah, the other highlight would just be working with Adriana and getting to know her better and feeling that I have a great colleague in her, and also someone who was very inspiring to me in my own work by watching her do her work.
Amazing. So Yoni, I want to stay with you for a second. I know you've spoken about the learning that you all did with the Jewish educator and how that influenced one particular song on your upcoming album. And one thing I did forget to mention at the beginning, Yoni and Adriana are both producing a capstone project. Yoni is creating a full-length album, which is really exciting. And Adriana is working on an exhibit that we are hopefully going to have in the community for people to view in this upcoming kind of fall, winter timeframe. But Yoni, I would love if you could talk a little bit about that song in particular, maybe share a clip of it and talk about how the kind of Jewish learning process influenced your work.
Sure. Yeah. So as part of the fellowship, we had two mentors, Tova Speeder, who was our artistic and community engagement mentor. And then we had Rabbi Charlie Schwartz, who gave us the opportunity to dig into some Jewish themes and Jewish texts, both in conversation with him and also in conversation with each other, Adriana and I. And at our very first meeting, Rabbi Charlie brought us this amazing example of a poem written at the end of the 10th century. And it was striking to both Adriana and I for many reasons, because of the resonance with the text and also the way it really holds up objects as a means of remembering our ancestors by, and as a means of connecting us to the past and also imagining ourselves into the future. And so this text was a poem written by the wife of Dunash ibn Labrat, and if you know of him, it's because he wrote a very famous piyut called Dror Yikra. But his wife was virtually unknown, so unknown that we don't know her name, so we refer to her as the wife of Dunash. And this poem is really special because, first of all, it's beautiful and incredibly poignant, and also it's the only example of a poem that was possibly written by a woman in this style and in that era. So I was taken with it, and I was inspired to set it to music, and it sort of set me on my way in my journey with the album. It was the first song I wrote, and I really wanted to capture the feeling of longing and the feeling of of using objects and that tactile sense of another person, imagining someone else's hands holding it, imagining the comfort it can give someone else in a moment of parting. And these parting moments are part of all of our stories, so it felt like a really important thing to represent in my album, and a perfect way to start off my creative process. So I wrote this song back in January and February, and yeah, it's gonna be on my album, and I'll share with you just a little bit right now, just to give you a sense of it, and you can look forward to hearing the full recorded version on the album, which actually features a friend of mine, Laura Lassie Townsend, who's an amazing vocalist. She's going to be singing with me on the album. I'll leave it right there, even though there's a lot more, and you can look forward to hearing the full version in the fall.
Perfect, thank you. And Adriana, similarly, you've told us that your community engagement work also inspired a piece you weren't necessarily expecting to make through the fellowship. So I would love for you to share that and tell us a bit about that process and your experience with the workshops.
Sure. Both Yoni and I had to do workshops, some individually, and as I said earlier, some we decided to do some joint ones. But throughout my workshops, whether they were individual or jointly with Yoni, one of the aspects we had people is to bring an object that held memory for them. If they had one from their ancestors, was great, and if not, something that that was important for them, either from the past or something that they would like to share in the future with their loved ones. And what really was powerful in that, Sophie, was that people were sharing these objects. They were photographing it during the workshop through Zoom, which was wonderful because we could see them photographing. But also they would tell us, we also asked them to reflect upon the stories, what this object was about. And it was really humbling. And we were very grateful that they were willing to share a little bit of their own histories with us, because the workshops were really small time, relatively, right? And so I really felt that it was important that they were giving us so much through these workshops. And it was important to me as a person who also works in community through my work at Massart to give back to the community. So let me share with you a piece that is in the midst of being made. Okay, here we go. You can see it, right? And so this is just work in progress, but all this is pieces that people in the community submitted, including actually Yoni's, who submitted a part of your family dictionary, right? The book that's a dictionary, right, Yoni? And we have Toba's, but it was just really, again, super meaningful to hear the stories to go with this piece. So again, this piece is in process. It was not part of the fellowship per se, but it just felt right. And I'm really excited to think about whether Yoni and I combine it with a piece of music or how it's going to be shared with the community back later on in the fall.
Great, thank you.
So let me stop sharing.
So speaking of stories, I know for both of you, stories and exploration of identity and family and history has been such an integral part of both of your work through the fellowship. So I would love if you could each just share, your research and creative process through the fellowship, and also a piece that kind of reflects that exploration you've done, and maybe reflect, how important is storytelling in your creative process. And Yoni, why don't you kick us off?
So family and stories and history is, of course, like really the bread and butter of what's inspiring my work right now. Part of the feeling I'm trying to capture is the not being able to access all of that. And we all have, for various reasons, some of us have very good records of where we came from and where we went and how we got there. And I have some of that, but I also have a lot of holes in my story, like a lot of people do. And that fragmentation is a big part of what I'm trying to bring to light in my album. And I'm trying to, instead of doing that with research and trying to fill in the pieces, I've been actually trying to enrich the experience of family and history through the senses and through imagination, and being able to fill in the details of our story by imagining, even if it's not an exact factual example of where we came from or how we arrived, imagining the sound or flow of the Tigris River in Iraq, for example, where my family comes from, or imagining the smells of a market or a particular dish, imagining the voices of people who sang or spoke, and the unique qualities of those voices. And even if we can't get them exactly right, to have that possibility and imagination be able to bring us closer to them. And so one of my workshops focused very strongly about this aspect of fragmentation, and I facilitated a dialogue and conversation with the workshop participants around our own fragmentation, trying to figure out, what do we know about our family and how do we know it? What don't we know and why don't we know it? What do we wish we knew about our families? And through examining those questions, we were able to notice the ways that we're fragmented, and also notice the ways that that fragmentation isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a barrier, even though it might be painful sometimes. It actually just is a part of our experience and a part of our story. And so after having reflected on that with all the participants, I invited them to help write the words for a song I'm working on called From the Fragments. And it's like a bit of a Mad Libs song. Basically, it gives, from the fragments of X, I am finding Y, or I am going to Y, or I will never find Y, or basically creating this, weighing these two things of I'm fragmented and also I'm me. And so I got some wonderful suggestions from participants, and it was a real delight to be able to incorporate some of those suggestions into the song. And even live during the workshop, they would type them in the chat and I would sing them, and we would have this flow of creativity, which was really, really special. And so this song, the verse is co-written with the members of the community, and then the chorus is this mantra, may I find my worth, may I find belonging, may I see the way I flow from past, I flow to future. So I'll play a little bit of this song right now, just so you can hear it, just a little taste, and then if there's time at the end, we'll end with a little bit more of this song, so that you can hear what a little bit more of it sounds like. I'll just play for now just the beginning of the first verse. From the fragments of forgetting, I may never find truth. From the fragments of translation, I may fumble for words. From the fragments of migration, I may never find home, never find home. I'll leave it there for now. I'll pass it over to Adriana.
Thank you. It's so evocative. I can tell Adriana was getting emotional as well. I know it's so resonant with the work that she's done, which she'll talk about now. But, I think for all of us, everybody has some kind of family history of movement somewhere, even if it's within the same country. And so I think it's a really, and even if it's not about movement, physical movement, about family history and how you keep those stories alive and what those fragments really look like. So thank you for sharing that. Adriana?
Yeah, I've heard this a second time, and every time I just tear up because Yoni has captured through the lyrics and obviously the music what I think a lot of my work is about. I approach my work similarly to Yoni, that to fill the holes, there has to be a part where we put ourselves in the feet of our loved ones, what they would have done or what did they do, right? Why do we imagine them doing? But I'm also a researcher. So I'm the kind of person that I go into what I think I've called before rabbit holes, right? I start doing research. And some pieces I get through research, other pieces I get through storytelling through my mother, who has been instrumental to this year's work. And the other one is imagining. So let me share a couple again of the work. So I won't talk about this because I've shared this before for those who have seen it, but my work started with really imagining what my grandparents' voyage would have been from Poland to Mexico. And in order to understand that, I ended up doing a whole bunch of research about migration laws, what had happened in the US. They couldn't come to the US and they ended up in Mexico. But I ended up going to a whole world of research, like what kind of transatlantic ships could have taken them from Poland, from their east towns in Poland all the way to Mexico, right? So I dug and dug, and I've been able to scratch out the possibilities that did not happen, but yet that's a mystery that remains. But at the end, after all that research, all I had left was to really imagine what it would have been for these newlyweds who were about 18 years old to engage in about 28 days in the ocean, crossing worlds from Europe to Mexico, and what it would have been for them to land in a whole new world, right? So this is the first piece I started the fellowship with, which is the portholes. These are meant to be the portholes as they look out into the ocean. And let me just try to see. Here, sorry. This is not a related piece, but as you can see, part of the research ends up leading to other creative venues, and the idea of the porthole kept resonating through a lot of my work. And equal to Yoni, the idea of sensory was important in my work. So my grandfather used to eat these fruit slices, which apparently my colleagues hate, but I loved in Mexico, and I saw my grandfather eat them with such incredible pleasure that it's almost like reading Marcel Proust when he talks about the Madeleine that he's eating in his book. And so this was meant to be a little bit of a fun piece, but really what this ended up being was another kind of research, which was these migration cards of Jews who ended up in Mexico. So a research organization, a Jewish research organization in Mexico, was able to get their hands on this when Mexico opened these archives. And I just wanted to show a little bit of the process, right? So I was able to gather the migration cards of a whole bunch of Jews, whatever was available. But what I decided to do was really look at the people who were in my grandparents' close circle, right? So I just wanted to share with you how it went. It went from these migration cards, like you see on the left is my grandmother, to really thinking, how can I make objects that tell this story? And so, as I was saying, my grandfather with those fruit slices, he would drink Lipton tea. So I bought a box of Lipton tea that has been sitting in my house for months, trying to get inspired. And eventually what happened is I brought this together and I started putting the people that were close to my grandparents in the Lipton teas, like literally collaging them. And then what you can see is the collaging, the whole bunch of them, and then actually soaking them in hot water to make tea out of them, which led to the production of these pieces, right? So again, this is the piece that I closed the fellowship with, which are these little, very delicate tea bags that in some way show the aging and the passing of time. And again, the people close to my grandparents. So again, this is my grandmother. This is a couple that came from the same town as my grandparents. And that was very important for my grandfather. A lot of his friends came from Zambrov. And in Mexico, it was a very small community of Zambrovers. And so most of them stayed in touch. They were close friends. I'll just share this one. Yeah, and I think, at the end, finding the the box, a tobacco box that's called the aging room, sort of closing these teacups. But again, it's all based on academic research, but also the process of going from doing photography, which is usually just hung on the walls, as I've done in the past, to really the creative process became more three-dimensional. There's accordion books, there's three-dimensional objects like this that came out of what I call the flow of art making. Let me stop here, the share.
Great, thank you. I love that idea of the aging of the object as well, to show the passage of time and to show that these are obviously things from the past, but so it's just so interesting and relevant and so sensory for both of you, that those kind of fragments and things that you're talking about. And it's interesting, that the senses, obviously, I think we've talked about this a lot, throughout the fellowship, and you've talked about this with the community, but that can evoke such memory, right? The smell of Lipton tea, those gummies that he used to eat, the things that you ate, of Iraqi heritage, Yoni, in growing up, all of those things, it just, for everyone, right? I have those associations as well. So it's amazing to see it in that kind of physical form. So I'd love to hear, we both, we've spoken a lot about kind of your individual processes so far, and a bit about collaboration, but I want to dive into the collaboration process a little bit more, both between the two of you. I know you've collaborated and sometimes in unexpected ways, but also with other artists. And I would love to, if you could just, each share a piece that's kind of been inspired or worked with that collaboration. And then how has this experience helped you grow, both as an individual artist, but also as a collaborator? And Adriana, why don't you kick us off this time?
Sure. I think really being in the fellowship with Yoni has been, I think what happens is a lot of ideas just sort of stay, and some of them become conscious and some of them subconscious. So or unconscious, right? Because I know Yoni as a musician, and he'll talk about this in a few minutes, deals a lot with collaboration as part of his practice, right? But as a photographer, a lot of my work in the past has been very solitary, not lonely, but solitary. I go alone, I need to be alone, I need to photograph. And so we were given the opportunity to really think about bringing other artists into this work. And I took the opportunity, and partly, and I'll show a piece, partly I thought, what an exciting opportunity, but I was a little nervous. I'm not used to working with people. But before I get to that, I just gotta say that the first collaborator in this, and I know I've mentioned, has been my mother, because she, from the very beginning, I said, Mom, you must write down the stories you know about your parents, because it's the way we pass down the history, whatever you know. And so I would say that the most significant collaborator throughout the time has been my mom. And I think this is a hard project for her, right? Because she has to relive stories of people who are no longer with us, her ancestors, her parents, their friends, etc. And she's been very giving. I mean, I've driven her crazy, calling her all the time with just 1-minute questions to long conversations. And the piece that I will show you, so my mom's collaboration is weaved in throughout. But the piece that I will show you is a collaboration that I did with two important people. The first person is Chris Libertino. He's an old and dear friend of mine from college, but more importantly, he's an incredibly talented composer and musician. And I knew that we've known each other for so many years that I knew that he would capture what I wanted. All I had was a recording of my grandfather singing a song that he used to sing with me as a little kid. And so I showed it to Chris. And so the collaboration was really fruitful because he would ask me really important and pointed questions, and he was a really close listener. So unlike other films, this one starts with the music. So the music is what starts it, right? As opposed to the music illustrating kind of the film. So it's the music comes first. And then I asked a former grad student of mine, Rimi Malik, to do the animation. So I provided her images, and then she would ask me for others. And again, she was wonderful in listening, and she allowed me to keep making changes, and she would put her own changes. And I wanted to work with Rimi partly because I knew she would be great, but partly because she also we share in common the immigration that she and I have both had. She coming from India and I obviously from Mexico. And even though neither one of them speak Hebrew, I knew that they would understand the bigger idea. So let me share that with you. I hope it works.
Well, and Adriana, before you share, the other collaboration is with your grandfather, right? You sing on the track as well with his recording.
Absolutely, yes. So my grandfather obviously has passed away for a while now. And so it was through Chris's amazing fingers, an amazing way of doing what he did that he had me sing with my grandfather. So it's just incredibly meaningful. That's just a little snippet, but I just want to be able to share here that the outlines are of my grandfather and me from photographs, and here's just an image of his singing. And so again, it's all, the photographs are of their home in Mexico, of their building in Mexico, not their actual apartment, but another apartment, but it's all where they lived for many, many years.
Incredible. Thank you. Yoni?
So collaboration has always been a part of my work. In fact, I'm quite the opposite of Adriana. I didn't know what to do when I had so many decisions to make all by myself, and so I'm used to collaborating, and it's been an important part of my identity as a musician. And in this project in particular, collaboration has been obviously very important. I've had collaborators in the community. Annabelle Rabia, who is an Iraqi chef, was someone who I spoke to many times in trying to conceive of a song that I was trying to write around the sensory memory of food and the smells of dishes and the tastes of dishes that bring us back to ancestors and loved ones and really make us feel grounded with a rushing memory that comes when we really smell something that's familiar that we haven't thought about or tasted or smelled in a long time. So she was a wonderful collaborator in just bouncing ideas off of her. I also spoke with my sister a lot, who really helped me craft the lyrics and conceive of the song, and my wife Leah, who was a major influence in helping me pull these words together. I'm not much of a lyricist myself, so it was I was relying very heavily on them to help me come up with the lyrics for this song. And then the last collaborators for this, as I mentioned, there were the community collaborators who helped me write the Fragment song and contributed lyrics for that. And for this song that I was just speaking of, the food and memory song, I invited members of the community to offer their own stories and their own voices to the texture of the music by sending me recorded snippets of different memories they have about food, different dishes they're trying to recreate, really anything that they think of when they think about food and memory and loved ones. And so with that, so many different influences, from the people's stories to Annabelle and my sister and other people that I had amazing conversations with, and my wife Leah, and my dad also, just like you, Adriana. I would call him and say, how do you say this in Arabic? How do you do this? And he actually helped me write a lot of the lyrics in the chorus. The chorus of the song is in Arabic. So there were a lot of ideas and a lot of different opinions and minds and experiences in this next song that I'm going to share for you. Just a little bit of it. This one is called "What Would You Say?" And it's funny, I realized just now that the two songs that I've shared with you are largely in English, but these are the only 2 songs in the album that are English. Most of the album is the lyrics are in Arabic and in Hebrew. But at least I'd love to be able to share this because of the collaborative aspect, and also because of the community engagement aspect. So I'm going to just play a little bit of the song, and again, like the other one, you'll be able to hear the full song final mix, at the end of the process in the fall when I'm finished and I release the album.
My grandmother, who was very, very specific for me when I was
my mother particularly. She used to spice it in a certain way. And nobody can really change something.
And to me, this is the most delicious food in the world.
Was a big piece of me having such a visceral,
And she used to stand there and it says,
I'm about to be astounded at the number of texture that I
so far away. I thought it was really hard to get it right.
Our histories are torn like shards of mint. Each piece perfumed with memory. Imagination fills the cracks with a rushing realness of your essence. I'll leave you hanging there.
Thank you. I love the overlapping voices at the beginning. I heard pieces of things that actually sparked memories for me with my own grandmother and cooking and smells and all of that. So it's great. Can't wait to hear the rest. So our last question before we wrap up, the fellowship is technically today. It's the last day. So we're wrapping up, which I can't believe. And it's hopefully really not an ending, but a beginning for both of you to continue sharing your work, diving into this exploration, and helping more people kind of get into these conversations. So what message are you hoping to share with the community through your work? And what part of the work do you think that you'll kind of continue to embrace or explore as you move on from this experience? Adriana, why don't you start?
I think what I hope to continue to do is continue to, when I'm working as an artist, is also bring the community in a more proactive way, right? Not just go to the gallery or go to an exhibit space and look at the work sort of more passively, but really think about ways that their own voices and creativity can be brought in. So that, I would say, has been one of the highlights from the fellowship that I plan to continue to do. In terms of my role as an artist, I'm excited to leave it where we are. Often when I teach a class on studio, I tell my students it's great when you're not totally done because you have something to look forward. You don't have to think, what am I going to do next, right? And so I feel there's still so many ideas to continue with here. I know in October, and I think we'll share this October 5th at 7 p.m. through Brandeis and director Dalia Wasner. We're going to have a talk about my work. And so I continue to think about even more pieces that will be created towards that deadline. Sophie, I envision going to Poland at one point and really seeing where my grandparents came from and understanding the history of the place and the destruction that took place for Jews in there. I mean, their towns, which were predominantly Jewish, or at least a majority Jewish, were destroyed during the Holocaust. And my hope is also to go to Mexico. And I was saying earlier to Yoni is that whereas when I go back to Mexico, I'm sort of retracing my own childhood, right? I'm really looking forward to retracing my grandparents' both physical but also symbolic steps through through Mexican culture in a new way that I hadn't thought about. Yeah, and I think, for the very long end, what I hope is to do what I had initially applied to do in the fellowship. I really thought I was going to be doing work about my own intersectionality as Jewish and Latina, but I had to step back and say I have to first delve into my own family's history. So in the long run, I think it's going to come full circle to that. But these are steps that I think I need to be doing first.
Amazing. We're excited to see that work emerge.
Thank you.
And Yoni?
Yeah, the message I'm hoping to send with the music, and I hope when people hear it, is they'll first of all feel a strong connection with their own stories. Even if my story is different than theirs, I hope the idea of sensory memory, imagined memory, fragmentation will resonate with people, and I hope that'll help them find peace and comfort in their own experience as a fragmented person in the world. Practically, I'll be releasing the album in the fall, and it'll be available on streaming platforms, and I look forward to hopefully, in the next year, creating some videos that can go along with them. I'll also be having a concert to release the album in the fall in October, so stay tuned for a date about that. And my dream is to be able to take this music and bring it to different communities and different stages and be able to perform it live. What I haven't been able to do for all of COVID, really, this project, I'm really hoping will enable me to do more of that in the future, to be able to do residencies at synagogues and to perform at world music and Jewish music festivals, and to bring this particular experience, my particular experience, and my particular understanding and approach to Arabic music as someone who's still learning it and still mastering it, to audiences around the world would be my dream. And then, more importantly, what I'm learning from the fellowship and taking with me is a sense of how important it is to engage community and how powerful it is. I think this fellowship would not have been, my work wouldn't have been anywhere close to what it was without the community engagement component. So I'm taking with me a sense of how important that is, and a commitment to continue doing that work as I present this project to audiences, and also in future projects that I work on. And I'm also I'm taking with me a sense of gratitude for this opportunity, for the members of the community who contributed to CJP and to J Arts, to Adriana, for being such an amazing colleague and inspiration, to my collaborators, and just grateful for the stories that we have, and I'm feeling like I want to enjoy that, even though it's sometimes painful. I also want to enjoy what we do know and what we do have to nourish us.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. Yeah, it's you just both have set such a high bar for future cohorts. It's been incredible to work with both of you. And again, gratitude to both of you also for coming with us on this journey of this first year of this program. And we definitely, will help to share info about the album release and about a hopeful exhibit for Adriana's work and how she's going to share her capstone with the community. You can see in the chat, there's information about ways to follow Yoni and Adriana on social media or their mailing lists. There's also an upcoming workshop that Adriana is doing at Brandeis on October 5th. So that's something to look out for as well. And we'll be opening up this application process for the next cohort, unbelievably, within the next month. So please keep an eye out for that if you know of some other incredible creatives who could both benefit from and contribute to this process. We would love for them to apply. So Yoni and Adriana, huge gratitude. Thank you so much. I didn't see any questions in the chat, so I'm going to assume that we covered all of it. And if you ever want to get in touch, you can obviously be in touch with me, with J Arts, and ask us anything you'd like about the project. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Sophie and J Arts, for CJP, for all that you've done for us. I think it's been a wonderful year. And thank you, Yoni.
Thank you all. Really a pleasure.
Now Yoni's going to share fragments, right? As people leave.
I thought actually maybe I'll share the other one since we didn't get it in the opening.
Great.
I'll end with something
Great.
a little more upbeat. The piece that was supposed to be in the opening, but because of unknown difficulties, didn't get it. So this is an instrumental piece, which was part of my upcoming album. It's called Sheikhat Lahara.
Perfect.